Hi, so I'm gonna talk with you about revisions. I'm gonna move that really fast. I have my revisions checklist open and I have my trash draft of my personal narrative open. And I know that revisions are not just line by line edits, but revisions are moving content, moving paragraphs and eliminating paragraphs and adding language choices in order to get my message across to my reader. So I have followed these steps. I've reread my trash draft. I have written out clearly what is my message. And then I have read it again. And that's my step that I'm on right now. I'm going to mark up my trash draft and I'm going to take notes about what I can revise to make this message that I wrote more clear. And then I'm going to follow through with those things. So here's my checklist down at the bottom here that I'm following for step 3. So first I'm going to draw a box around my conflict. So I'm going to reread my narrative and I know that my message is right here. And so I'm going to focus on where is my conflict showing up most clearly, and do I have a moment in my narrative that is like very exciting, comes to a head where I'm dealing with that conflict that I learned about myself through. So I'm going to try that first, and I'm going to pause this somehow. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. Yes, 1 second. Okay, sorry, kind of a mess of a video, but we're doing great. So I found my conflict and or my climax moment, and kind of what tipped me off was this change in language of like suddenly. Before then, I was kind of contemplative in my rising action events. So I'm gonna go back now, and I'm gonna draw a star at the beginning of each event that leads up to this climax moment. So let's go back. Here's my introduction piece. So I think I'm gonna underline introduction later. So I'm just gonna label it for myself. That's my notes. So I know that this is my context. 1 second. That was Mr. Overton. Great. So as I'm reading, I recognize that I found some more context here that I think I should break up into part of the context in my introduction, and then I found sort of the start of a rising action here. So I starred this like my next piece of my checklist, and I wrote a note to myself of like, I need to come back and make this a new rising action paragraph. Here's my next one where I have a temporal transition or a time transition. I'm going to keep reading, and I know this is another event, so he's bringing along some toys, and then he's moving closer to the ocean. My son is. That's another transition in time. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different rising action events. So I'm going to check that off of my checklist, and then underline the context and details in my introduction. So I'm going back to my context up here that I already labeled. And now I'm going to, I'll underline it. So I'm 37 weeks pregnant. So that's kind of me as a character. That's some background. Here's some background on my son. He's thoughtful. And that's kind of intro to my message. 2, I kind of want to make that note to myself. I know what my message is really clearly, so I have some context information on like who I am, what I'm about, and then I also have some like introduction to what I'm going to be proving. Where we wanted to give him, so why are we at the beach? Here's some background information. Yeah, and then we're at the dog beach. So I have some background about where we are, who I am, who my son is, the characters, and then how I'm sort of feeling is this here. how I'm feeling, who I am, who my son is, where we are. So it's not listing person, place, or thing, but I'm kind of giving this background to set my reader up to understand this is what's happening. So I've underlined my context. Now I'm going to go and circle my transitions. I should see a transition at the beginning and or at the end of each new paragraph through the beginning, middle, and end. So we were, that's like a transitioning. We're tired. I don't see a transition there as much. We tried everything. It's just a new rising action. He brought, which is a like an action, like he's doing something differently, but I need to add transition here. I know I'm missing like that language marker. I eventually is a time transition, and then suddenly marks emotional transition. He turns to me. I need to add another transition here. So I didn't do this very well, and I'm recognizing that because I can't really circle that much. Yes, we waited. Now that's a good transition that I do have here. But here's my boy, that's my message. I just want to be clear with that. Oh, this is also my message. So maybe that's a little too long. That I know that's my ending. Yes, I have some dialogue there. So I don't have a strength in my transitions. That's going to be something I might focus on. And then I'm going to go back to that message stuff that I bracketed earlier. And I'm going to point out what's my message. So I wrote it out exactly. Some of the lines that I wrote out exactly for my message are in here, but I also rephrased it exactly the way he is. I thought he would follow my boy. I will never grow tired of watching him. I would miss him. So I have it here, my message in this. So it's not necessarily the ending, but it is. So a lot of this I show, I've like defined really clearly in what is my message. So I found in my conclusion or in my resolution, my end, which is also where you should find it. I have it in the beginning, a little bit in the context. So I'm going to draw an arrow next to that too. Message, message, message. So it's in the beginning and the end of my structure. And my last step here is highlight my language choices that get my message across. So I'm going to take a second to do this. 1 second. All right. So what I noticed is I have sensory detail, I have descriptive language, and I have dialogue, but I'm missing some probably literary devices there. And then I have to think to myself, do I need a literary device? And I probably will want to include a literary device in my climax and in sort of the rising action events in the middle to bring some interest and grab the reader's attention. So I've highlighted what I do have: sensory detail, descriptive language, dialogue, and now I know I need to go back and add some more engaging language choices. So my goals are going to be transitions. My goals are going to be also some literary devices and some adding some sensory detail probably. Check. So now I've read it and I've marked it up again and I've started to write notes, but I'm going to keep adding some notes and I need to check back and make sure I don't need to delete anything that gets off track for my message. So I'm going to do that next for me. And then I'm going to actually start writing out those sentences and transition words that I said I'm missing those. And then if I'm moving stuff, I'm going to move it around with arrows. So my next step, deleting, actually writing in the sentences I know I'm missing based on the checklist, and like just writing notes to myself however I need to write them for my draft. This is a mess of a video. Thanks for following along. You're doing great. 1 second. All right, so I know while I'm writing notes and while I'm making revisions and things, I need some support. So I go to the qualities of a good personal narrative document. I'm going to reread through language details, structure. I'm going to add some transition words for time. I know I was missing that, so I'm going to go back and see how can I add transition words at the beginning or end of paragraphs, especially my rising action paragraphs, in order to keep my reader moving. I know that I want to make sure I'm doing some compelling dialogue. So I'll look at dialogue purposes and then how do we use dialogue to show relationships. And then down here, I have some dialogue tags to make sure how people are saying things is interesting. So I'm going to go back and add sensory detail on my own, really describe those places, feelings, emotions. I'm going to make sure I have transitions between my paragraphs and events, and I'm going to make sure my dialogue is really strong by using transition words and dialogue tags. Thanks. Bye.